Don't you laugh as well, I don't want you smirking.
Well, I'm with Jack Wakeman.
Yes,
from Jack Wakeman and the Dream Striders. Tell me a little bit about the band and how the band formed.
The band formed when I moved up to Glasgow a couple of years ago. It was sort of just towards the end of the lockdown period, and I put a couple of adverts out in sort of music-related columns and stuff, and I got a really nice response from a couple of people, including the two Callums that are in the band, Callum Shanks, who plays guitar, and Callum Edwards, who plays drums. He also plays in the Red Hot Chili Peppers, so that's my sort of die-hard.
Are they based in Fife?
I don't know where they're based all over. They're a bit of an organisation. I don't think they're less of a band, more of like an organisation. But yeah. And then it just sort of spiraled from there, and sort of like, the more friends that I sort of met and got to know and stuff, sort of brought them in, and it sort of gravitated around this sort of central idea of this, being in the band and stuff. So that's how it sort of came about. I'm really proud of it actually, because it came about quite organically and stuff. So yeah, I'm quite proud of that. Yeah.
So the band's been going for about 2 years now.
It's been going for about a year and a half, I'd say, yeah. So we first did our first ever rehearsal about a year and a half ago. We all got in a room, so I just showed them the songs. I said, I've got these demos, including Visions and Cosmic Fear and Feel Again in Time. And they really liked it and said, let's make this a thing. And it sort of expanded from there, yeah.
So what influenced you to become a singer-songwriter?
I never actually wanted to be a singer-songwriter in the first place. I was a session bass player for a long time, and then I sort of fell into it. I sort of started writing bits on piano, sort of messing around on acoustic guitar and bits like that. And then pleasure, David. Pleasure, mate. And then I don't know. I just started. Again, it kind of came quite sort of naturally, and I didn't really believe in myself as a songwriter and stuff. And I still kind of. Try and get myself in the headspace of, rather than just being a bass player in a band, trying to get into the mentality of a singer-songwriter. Yeah, I think that's probably the best I can do with that. Yeah.
So you've been a session bass guitarist for New Order and The Fall.
Yes,
what was it like working with the likes of Bernard Sumner and Peter Hook?
Well, so I never worked with Peter Hook, but I know Peter Hook through the rest of the Light band. So I know his drummer quite well, and a guy called Pete, who's a fantastic drummer in Manchester. So I've met Peter a couple of times, and he's a fantastic guy, really nice guy. Bernard sort of very keeps himself to himself. I didn't really interact with Bernard a whole lot, but my experience with New Order was fantastic, and really, as a 20-year-old, really being thrown into all that world was quite a thing, sort of. And I hope it doesn't mean I peaked too early, but
Who would you say are your favourite influences then?
I think my top three in my life, like Pink Floyd's been a really big thing for me. When I really got into Pink Floyd when I was 16, 17, that sort of really opened the world of sort of progressive rock up to me. And then went into sort of bands like Gentle Giant, Caravan, Genesis, yes, all that sort of stuff. And that's been a big thing for me. Then I discovered the music of John Martin, the Glaswegian singer-songwriter, that man's music changed my life. It really did. And really sort of inspired me as a singer-songwriter. I think that's really where that stuff comes from. Because I'm actually really interested in folk music as well. I've got a deep love for a lot of the sort of 60s folk stuff. Bert Jansch, John Renbourn, Pentangle, Fairport, all that stuff. That's where the singer-songwriter stuff, I think, comes in. And then Kate Bush was another big one for me. I discovered her music in my late teens. And that just opened a whole sort of mindset that I wasn't aware of. That sort of ability to tap into something sort of childlike within you. Sort of, it's okay to sing about whatever you want. I don't know, her music was very inspiring to me and all that stuff. So yeah, they're probably my big three, if I had to nail it down.
How would you describe the sound from Jack Wakeman and the Dream Striders? How would you describe the sound? It's
apocalyptic optimism is how I would describe the sound of Jack Wakeman and the Dream Striders. I like to think that whilst the world is burning and terrible things are going on, I think there is light and beauty in the world and all that stuff. I'm trying to channel that mindset into the music.
So what musician do you admire the most?
That's a really good question. Right now, I've really got back into John Martin again, and his sort of ability to sort of channel something really deep within him. And he's such an underrated guitar player. As good as his songs are, his guitar playing is absolutely magical. Because he doesn't really know anything, he doesn't know how to read music or write music. It just comes from somewhere really natural. So today, right now, John Martin.
John Martin.
Yeah.
Cosmic Fear was one of your first songs that I played at Radio Saltaire. Tell me a little bit about the song and what's the song about?
Cosmic Fear is a really interesting song because it came about during the midst of a mental breakdown I had in Manchester, where I developed a fear of the outside world, and I shut myself in and I closed my blackout curtains and I didn't want to look outside, and I couldn't bear... Richard Burton's actually got a really interesting quote about this. He says that he couldn't bear the beauty of the world. It was too much for him to bear. And I sort of, in that moment, I really related to that and all that stuff. And I kept... one of the silly lyrics in the song is, "I've made too much rice again." And that kept happening to me, and it really sent me into like a big spiral. So it sort of comes from that. And I try and balance that. The apocalyptic optimism comes from acknowledging that there's this whole dark thing that happened, this mental breakdown, but also there's a humorous element in that. It's just rice, it doesn't matter. And the whole curtains thing, don't look behind the curtains, it's too much, and all that stuff. And so, because sometimes it's okay to leave the curtains closed, and we don't have to know everything. William Blake's got a really good quote about that. He says, and I quote it in the song, that the idea of a fourfold vision. So the idea of that is there's many layers to life, and you don't need to understand it all, and it's okay to not understand it all, because that's where you can derive a lot of magic of life from. So I think that's...
Where does your creative process come from then? I mean, is it through your family or through friends,
No,
or
my
just
immediate family,
ideas that you come across?
It comes from all sorts of places, I think. Oh, thank you. My immediate family, my sort of parents aren't very musical at all, but my granddad's quite musical. He plays guitar. He taught me how to play guitar and all this stuff. He played in a band with Mick Ronson in the 60s, actually, which is pretty cool. So that's a sort of a bit of a claim to fame for me. Anyway, because Mick Ronson's amazing, guy. And so the process is hard to pin down, because every song has a different process, and I can't ever, and I don't think I would ever want to know where it comes from. Neil Young calls it waiting by the rabbit hole, and just, you're just fishing, and when you catch something, just go with it.
Just go with it.
Yeah, just go with it. And I think that's, just go with the flow is probably the answer to your question. And sorry to meander on, but that's probably the...
Is there a particular place you feel most creative?
That's a really good question. I like to go away from music for a while and then come back to it. I feel like it builds the well up. It's how going away to places, especially living in Glasgow in Scotland, is a massive boon to me, because it's so close to the Highlands. It's so easily accessible to just go get out there and just sort of, I don't want to say inspired by nature, but sort of the ability to get away from a lot of things and sort of have a clearer head, then come back to it. And then I find myself just picking up the guitar or piano or whatever, and it just sort of comes out, and I try not to think about it too much, and just, like I said, go with the flow. I think that's probably the...
So what do you like and hate about the music industry today?
I like...
What are you passionate about with the music industry, and what do you not like?
I don't like social media. I think social media is a real sort of hindrance for a lot of bands, because you've got to think, you've got a whole other element of promotion that you have to think about, which really saps your energy away from the creativity of writing the music and creating the music. So that I don't like at all. I think, but on the other hand, sort of the internet and all that stuff really helps with getting music out there. So it's absolutely a double-edged sword. So I love just being able to get things out there and the possibility of people listening to it. But I hate social media and feeling the burden to try and be funny and creative on that as well is a real sort of burden. And that's the same for a lot of bands. That's not just me. I speak to a lot of bands and artists and stuff, and they all say the same thing. So probably those two. things.
How hard is it for you to get your music heard in today's industry? How is it quite hard for you? We've been a sort of new band.
Maybe it might be. I think that's the kind of thing. If you dwell on it too much, it can feel overwhelming. So if you try not to think about it too much, that can sometimes help. It's probably easier than ever to get a small amount of people to listen to music, but harder than ever to get a lot of people to hear music because, and I hate this term, but I don't know how to word it otherwise, the sort of oversaturation of the market. You know, there's so many good bands and there's so much, which has always been the same, that's always been the case. Mm-hmm. It's just now people have that instant access, and so it's a little bit more frivolous. You can sort of dip in and out of so many different things, which I think sometimes means you end up forgetting about some bands and artists and stuff, especially if they go quiet for a few months or whatever. And that's part of the problem with the pressure of social media. You have to keep on it all the time, and it's sort of relentless, and so it's a bit annoying. But yeah.
Your new single, The Watching Hour. Can you tell me a little bit about it and how you came about writing it?
That came about. It first came about because I was messing around just towards the end of my tenure in Manchester. Came about. I was messing around with synthesizers for the first time, and I had an arpeggiated synthesizer, and I sort of just hit this, and I thought, that's cool, I really like that, I can work with that. So I sort of built the song up from that, and the lyrics and the words of the song came about through just a fascination with paganism and sort of Celtic paganism, and doing research into that, and it's something, because I felt an affinity towards that as soon as I learnt about it, because it's truly of the British Isles. Celtic paganism is within all our blood, and we seem to forget about that element of our history and stuff. So that I felt a sort of reconnection with something that I felt was in me the whole time. That the whole sort of I'm a happier heathen now than I ever was at peace is, I think, is an acknowledgement of that. So sort of those two things, messing around with synthesizers and an interest in Celtic paganism is where The Witching Hour came from.
This was the last day of your tour as well.
Yes.
Obviously, the 3 or 4 days that you've done, and finishing up in Edinburgh. How else has your tour been received by the public that's come to see you?
Glasgow was magic. Glasgow was really nice because it was a really busy show, and I'm new to Glasgow, so I really didn't expect that to happen. So that was a real sort of really inspiring. I knew I had a really good idea of who would come to the English shows. Sheffield, I've got some friends there. Liverpool's got some friends there. Manchester got some friends there. So I sort of had a good idea. Glasgow was totally out of the blue. I had no idea who would turn up. I was really nervous about it. But all these people just turned up out of nowhere to just hear the band, and it was amazing, you know. So I suppose that's really the highlight of the tour, I suppose. Yeah.
Excellent. Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Mm-hmm. If anybody wants to get in touch with you about your music, whereabouts is the best place to go?
Our handles are The Dream Strider. I'm the most active on Instagram. Couldn't tell you why, I've got no idea. I think I'm the funniest on Twitter because it seems to be a good platform to just spur your sort of brains out on because it's so sort of frivolous. But it's mainly Instagram that I'm mostly on, and all our handles are at The Dream Strider.
Excellent. Well, it's been a pleasure talking to you, Jack. I look forward to you coming back to here again to Edinburgh, and
I can't wait.
And playing another venue in Edinburgh.
Yes.
What's up for the rest of the year? Have you got any plans for the rest of the year?
So we're going to have a month off now, and we're going to chill out and rejigger the old heads, and then we come back in July, and we're heading out to Liverpool. So I do all my studio recording in Liverpool with a guy called Daniel Woodward, who's an amazing producer. It's fantastic. I love working with him. He really gets the best out of me, I think. So we're going to head down there and we're going to record an EP, and it will be out by the end of the year. And we're going to do a big sort of Glasgow blowout towards the end of the year, I think. Nothing in stone yet, but that's the loose plan of the year. So.
Will Edinburgh be included?
I'd hope so. I'd really like to, actually. The more that we sort of.
It's just about getting out of there.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, I would really like to. Absolutely.
Excellent. It's been a pleasure talking to you, Jack.
Thank you,
man. And yes, I look forward to new music when it eventually comes out again.
Me too.
Brilliant. Thanks very much. Thanks.
Pleasure. Thank you.